Have you ever wondered how one small act of kindness could change your life forever? Liam never expected his decision to help a lonely neighbor would lead him down a path he could have never imagined. On an ordinary day in the quiet town of Cedar Hill, he spotted an elderly woman struggling with an old TV on her porch. Most people would have walked by, maybe even shrugged it off. But Liam? He couldn't ignore her, and so he stopped, offering a simple hand of help. Little did he know, that single moment would be the spark for an extraordinary friendship, one that would unlock hidden stories, unearth lost dreams, and awaken a purpose within him he didn't know existed. Who was this mysterious neighbor, and what secrets did she carry? And how would her late husband's legacy come to shape Liam's destiny in ways he couldn't yet understand? A simple act was all it took to set everything in motion, but how far would it go? Today's story is sure to bring you warmth through the kindness of humanity, warming each of our hearts during these cold winter days. But before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more meaningful stories. Liam was a spirited teenager, known in his neighborhood for his easy smile and boundless curiosity. He often spent his afternoons riding his bike along the tree-lined streets of Cedar Hill, letting the breeze tousle his hair as he zipped through the neighborhood he'd known his whole life. On this particular afternoon, as the golden light cast long shadows on the pavement, Liam felt especially lighthearted, soaking in the sounds of laughter and distant lawnmowers. As he pedaled around the corner of Willow Lane, something unusual caught his eye. Just a few houses down, in front of a small white house with a quaint garden, stood an elderly woman who appeared to be struggling with an old television set on her front porch. Her silver hair glinted in the sunlight, and she seemed visibly flustered as she fiddled with the TV's buttons, muttering under her breath. Liam slowed his bike, curiosity and concern tugging at him. He recognized the woman as Ms. Dolores, who had always greeted him with a warm smile whenever he passed by. She was known in the neighborhood for her impressive rose bushes and for her occasional offering of freshly baked pies to anyone lucky enough to visit. But recently, Liam had noticed Ms. Dolores was less active, her roses a little less tended, her presence a little quieter. Pulling up to the edge of her yard, Liam called out gently, "Hi, Ms. Dolores. Is everything all right?" His tone was soft, cautious not to startle her. "Ms." Dolores looked up, her surprise quickly giving way to a warm, if weary, smile. "Oh, Liam, dear. I didn't see you there. This old TV, it's been giving me trouble, and I was hoping to catch my favorite show this afternoon. But it seems it's decided to retire on me." Liam parked his bike by the curb and walked over, his gaze shifting between Ms. Dolores and the worn-out TV. He could see the frustration in her expression, her hands trembling as she tried to press a few more buttons. He felt a pang of empathy, knowing how much she cherished her afternoon shows. "Would you like me to take a look at it, Ms. Dolores?" Liam asked, his tone warm and eager to help. "I'm pretty good with electronics, and I'd love to give it a shot." Ms. Dolores's eyes brightened with hope. "Oh, would you, Liam? That would be so kind of you. I'd be incredibly grateful." Liam knelt beside the TV, examining its dusty back panel and worn-out wiring. He noticed Ms. Dolores standing close by, watching him with cautious optimism. The television seemed like it had been through decades of service, yet he could tell it held sentimental value. As Liam tinkered with the cords, gently tugging and reconnecting wires, Ms. Dolores shared snippets of stories about the shows she used to watch with her late husband, Benjamin. She chuckled softly, reminiscing about the days when they'd sit on the porch with a bowl of popcorn, enjoying reruns of classic comedies. The laughter in her eyes was both heartwarming and bittersweet. "You know, Liam," Ms. Dolores said, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth, "this TV isn't just any TV. Benjamin gifted it to me on our anniversary, decades ago. It's almost like having a piece of him here with me." Liam paused, his heart touched by her words. He realized then that his small act of kindness might mean more than just fixing a broken appliance. With a renewed sense of purpose, he carefully opened the back panel, narrowing his gaze to focus on the maze of wires and circuitry. Ms. Dolores watched with bated breath as Liam continued to work, his brow furrowed in concentration. The sun was dipping lower, casting a warm glow over them both, and Liam's focus was unwavering. His hands moved with the precision of someone twice his age, guided by a mix of determination and compassion. Finally, with one last adjustment, the TV sputtered to life. The screen flickered for a moment before a clear picture appeared, filling the silence with the familiar hum of dialogue. Miss Dolores's face lit up in astonishment, her hands covering her mouth in disbelief. "Oh, my goodness!" she gasped, clapping her hands together. "You did it, Liam. You actually did it." Liam grinned, a flush of pride warming his cheeks. "It wasn't too tricky, just a loose connection," he replied modestly. "I'm really glad I could help." For a moment, Miss Dolores was silent, her eyes misting over as she gazed at the now-functioning TV. Her voice quivered with gratitude as she said, "Thank you so much, Liam. You don't know what this means to me. This TV, it holds so many memories." Liam's heart swelled with an unexpected surge of emotion. He realized he hadn't just fixed a television. He'd helped rekindle a cherished connection to Ms. Dolores's past. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt profound, as though he'd been given a small role in preserving her memories. Breaking the tender moment, Ms. Dolores's face brightened with an idea. "I just baked a fresh batch of shortbread cookies this morning," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Why don't you come in and have a few? It's the least I can do to thank you." Liam's eyes sparkled at the mention of cookies. "That sounds wonderful, Ms. Dolores. Thank you." As they stepped inside her cozy living room, Ms. Dolores placed a plate of warm shortbread cookies and a glass of milk in front of Liam, who eagerly took a bite. The rich, buttery flavor melted in his mouth, and he let out a delighted sigh. "These are incredible, Ms. Dolores. You're an amazing baker." Ms. Dolores chuckled, a glimmer of joy returning to her eyes. "I'm so glad you like them, dear. I haven't had someone to bake for in a while, so this is a real treat." They sat together, enjoying the cookies and sipping milk, while Ms. Dolores began sharing stories of her younger days. She spoke about her late husband, Benjamin, who had been a dedicated firefighter in their small town. Her voice softened, and her eyes misted as she recalled his bravery and kindness. Though it had been years since his passing, her love for him was clear in every word. Liam listened intently, feeling a mix of admiration and sadness. He sensed that her life had been filled with joy and love, but also with a quiet, enduring loneliness. "I'm sorry that you've been feeling so alone, Ms. Dolores," he said, reaching out to gently pat her hand. "That must be really hard." Ms. Dolores squeezed his hand, her gaze softening. "You're a wonderful young man, Liam. You've made this old woman's day so much brighter." Liam beamed at her words, a warm sense of fulfillment spreading through him. Fixing her TV had been a small gesture, but the impact it had was unmistakable. He hadn't just restored a piece of Ms. Dolores's past. He'd brought her a sense of companionship and warmth she had long been missing. As they finished their snack, Ms. Dolores looked at Liam with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Liam," she said, "you're welcome to visit anytime you like. I'd love the company, and there will always be cookies waiting for you." Liam's face broke into a wide grin. "Really? That would be amazing, Ms. Dolores. I'd love to come visit." With a gentle squeeze of his hand, Ms. Dolores whispered, "Thank you, Liam, for bringing so much joy back into this house." As he rode his bike home that evening, Liam's heart felt lighter than ever. The sunset painted the sky in vibrant hues, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets. He couldn't wait to tell his parents about his afternoon with Ms. Dolores. He'd only intended to help a neighbor in need, but in doing so, he'd gained a friend, and perhaps even a grandmother figure. The following day, Liam could hardly contain his excitement as he pedaled his way over to Ms. Dolores's house. He'd found himself replaying their afternoon together in his mind, smiling at the memory of her joy when the TV screen flickered to life. There was something warm and fulfilling about connecting with her, a feeling he couldn't quite put into words. As he arrived at her front yard, he found Ms. Dolores tending to her rose bushes, her face lighting up the moment she saw him. "Liam!" she exclaimed, waving him over with a gardening glove still on her hand. "What a lovely surprise! To what do I owe the pleasure?" Liam grinned as he parked his bike by the fence. I just thought I'd stop by to see how the TV's holding up, and maybe to see if those cookies are still around," he added with a playful wink. Miss Dolores laughed, a twinkle in her eye. "Oh, you are in luck. I've got a fresh batch cooling right now. Come on in, dear." She beckoned him inside, her expression filled with warmth and appreciation. The moment Liam stepped into her cozy living room, he was hit with the comforting aroma of cookies baking and the subtle, nostalgic scent of old books and lavender. He took in the surroundings, noting the countless picture frames adorning the walls and shelves, each one capturing a moment from Ms. Dolores's life. It was like stepping into a personal history, a timeline of her cherished memories. As they settled at the kitchen table, Dolores brought over a plate of warm oatmeal raisin cookies and 2 glasses of milk. "Here you go, dear," she said, sliding the plate toward him. "Help yourself." Liam bit into a cookie, savoring its chewy sweetness. "These are amazing, Miss Dolores. You're a natural." She chuckled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Why, thank you, Liam. I used to bake all the time. My late husband, Ben, had the biggest sweet tooth, and I was always trying to keep up with his requests for cookies and pies. My baking's not as adventurous as it once was, but I do enjoy it." Curious, Liam glanced at the framed photograph on the wall behind her. It showed a younger Miss Dolores, standing beside a man with a kind smile and a badge on his chest. "Is that Ben?" he asked, nodding toward the picture. Miss Dolores followed his gaze, her smile softening as her eyes took on a distant look. "Yes, that's him," she said quietly. "He was the love of my life and my best friend. We shared so many years together, and he had a way of making every single one of them feel special." She paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "Ben was a firefighter, you know, brave and selfless, always putting others before himself. The whole town knew him, and not just because he wore a uniform. He made it his mission to know everyone and to help where he could. There wasn't a person he wouldn't lend a hand to if they needed it." Liam listened, captivated by her stories. He could see the pride in her eyes, and he felt a deep sense of admiration for this man he had never met. "He sounds like an amazing person," Liam said quietly. "It must have been hard to lose him." Miss Dolores nodded, her smile tinged with sadness. "It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Losing him felt like losing a part of myself. For a while, I didn't know how I would go on, but then I remembered what Ben used to say. He'd always tell me that life's worth living if you can make a difference, no matter how small." Liam felt a lump form in his throat. He realized how deeply Ms. Dolores cherished her memories of Ben and how those memories continued to shape her. It dawned on him that perhaps, in some small way, he was helping her hold onto that joy and connection. "You know," Ms. Dolores continued, "you remind me a bit of him. Ben had the same kind heart, always looking out for others. I think he would have liked you very much, Liam." Liam felt a swell of pride and warmth. "Thank you, Ms. Dolores. That means a lot to me." They fell into a comfortable silence, savoring their cookies and milk. Ms. Dolores seemed lost in thought, and Liam felt an urge to know more about her life. "Ms. Dolores," he ventured, "would you mind sharing more stories about you and Ben? I'd love to hear about all the things you two did together." Ms. Dolores's face lit up at the invitation, and she began recounting tales of her life with Ben. She spoke of their first meeting at a town festival, where she had accidentally spilled lemonade on his uniform. "I was mortified, but Ben just laughed and offered to buy me a new cup," she recalled with a smile. "We ended up talking for hours that day. By the time the sun set, I knew he was the one." She went on to share stories of their adventures, from road trips in their old, rusty camper van to spontaneous picnics by the lake. Ben was always finding ways to make ordinary days feel extraordinary, she said, her eyes misting over. There was never a dull moment with him. Liam could almost picture the scenes as she described them, the laughter, the shared moments, and the quiet strength of their bond. He admired how Ms. Dolores's eyes sparkled when she spoke about her late husband, as if he were still beside her. "One of my favorite memories," Ms. Dolores continued, "was the time we were caught in a downpour on our anniversary. We had gone out to celebrate, and on our way back, the rain started pouring down out of nowhere. We were drenched within minutes. Ben just laughed, grabbed my hand, and started dancing with me right there in the rain. He didn't care who was watching. That's the kind of person he was, full of joy and always living in the moment. Liam felt a surge of emotion, his admiration for Ben growing with each story. He had never heard someone speak so lovingly and passionately about another person. It was clear to him that Ben had left a deep and lasting impact on Ms. Dolores's life, and perhaps even on the community. As the afternoon sunlight began to fade, casting a warm glow through the kitchen window, Dolores looked at Liam with a gentle expression. "Thank you, Liam," she said softly, "for listening. It's been a long time since I've shared these memories with anyone." Liam reached across the table, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Thank you for sharing them with me, Ms. Dolores. I feel like I've learned so much about you, and about Ben. I think he would have been really proud of you." Ms. Dolores gave him a grateful smile, her eyes shimmering. "You're a good soul, Liam. I'm glad to have you as a friend." Liam's heart swelled with warmth. He hadn't expected this simple visit to turn into something so meaningful, but as he looked into Ms. Dolores's eyes, he realized that this was the beginning of a special bond. He'd gained not just a friend, but a wise mentor and a window into a life filled with love and resilience. They spent the rest of the afternoon chatting about their favorite books, her love for painting, and the little quirks of Cedar Hill that only longtime residents seemed to notice. As the hours slipped by, Liam felt a deep sense of contentment, like he had found a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing. Before he left, Ms. Dolores walked him to the door and handed him a small tin. "For you," she said, smiling warmly. "A little something to remind you that you're always welcome here." Liam accepted the tin with a grin, knowing it was filled with her delicious cookies. "Thank you, Ms. Dolores. I'll definitely be back soon." As he rode home, the evening air cooling his skin, Liam reflected on the day's events. He realized that their friendship had blossomed from something as simple as fixing a TV, yet it had grown into something profoundly meaningful. He had not only given Ms. Dolores a sense of companionship, but she had also enriched his life with her wisdom and stories. By the time he pulled into his driveway, Liam felt a warmth he hadn't known before, an appreciation for the quiet strength of people like Ms. Dolores and the beauty of the memories they carried. He was already looking forward to his next visit, to hearing more about her life, and to continuing their newfound friendship. That evening, as Liam returned home from Ms. Dolores's, he was brimming with excitement. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over Cedar Hill, and his mind was filled with stories of Ms. Dolores and her late husband, Ben. Liam couldn't wait to share everything he had learned with his parents. As he walked through the front door, his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kent, were just finishing up dinner preparations in the kitchen. The delicious aroma of his mom's famous lasagna filled the air, making Liam's stomach rumble. Mrs. Kent looked up from her chopping board, smiling when she saw him. "There's our adventurer," she teased. "You're home just in time for dinner." Liam slid into a chair at the kitchen table, barely able to hold back his excitement. "Mom, Dad," he began, his words coming out in a rush. "Today, I ran into Ms. Dolores again at the end of the street, and it was wonderful. I had helped her fix an old TV the other day, and she shared so many incredible stories about her life with her husband, Mr. Ben." Mr. Kent raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Isn't Ms. Dolores the woman with the beautiful garden? The one who used to bring pies to the neighborhood meetings?" Liam nodded eagerly. "Yes, that's her. She's really nice. She told me all about Ben, who was a firefighter, and how much he loved helping people. I didn't realize how many amazing stories she had to share." Mrs. Kent set down her knife, her face softening with interest. "It sounds like she had a really special life. And it sounds like you made quite an impression on her too, fixing her TV like that." Liam smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "She seemed really happy. She even invited me back, and Mom, she bakes the best cookies. I think she enjoyed having someone to talk to." Mr. Kent nodded thoughtfully. "You know, Liam, not everyone has family close by, especially as they get older. People like Ms. Dolores can feel pretty isolated. I'm really proud of you for reaching out to her and making her feel seen." Mrs. Kent's gaze softened, and she set a hand on Liam's shoulder. Your dad's right. It's wonderful that you took the time to connect with her. Maybe we should invite her over for dinner one evening. I'd love to meet her. Liam's eyes lit up. Do you think she'd come? I think she'd love it. She mentioned that she doesn't get a lot of visitors, and she really misses having someone to talk to. Mrs. Kent smiled. Then it's settled. How about Sunday night? We can make her feel at home and hear some of those stories for ourselves. The idea filled Liam with a warm sense of joy. He couldn't wait to bring Ms. Dolores into their family circle, to see her laughing and enjoying a meal in their home. Sunday arrived quickly, and the Kents spent the day preparing a special dinner in anticipation of Ms. Dolores's visit. The whole family pitched in, setting the table with their finest dishes and even arranging a small bouquet of flowers as a centerpiece. Mr. Kent prepared his signature roast, and Mrs. Kent made her famous apple pie for dessert. Liam was practically bouncing with excitement as he waited for Ms. Dolores's arrival. When the doorbell finally rang, Liam raced to open it, grinning as he welcomed her in. Ms. Dolores, I'm so glad you could come. Ms. Dolores smiled warmly, a hint of shyness in her eyes as she stepped inside. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and Liam noticed she had brought a small tin with her. Thank you for inviting me, Liam. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, glancing around at the cozy warmth of their home. Not at all, Mrs. Kent assured her, stepping forward to give her a gentle hug. We've heard so much about you, and we're thrilled you could join us. Dinner's just about ready. Mr. Kent took her coat, hanging it carefully on the rack. And we're looking forward to those stories Liam's been telling us about. Ms. Dolores blushed, holding out the tin she'd brought. It's just a few cookies I made as a thank you for having me over. I didn't want to come empty-handed. Mrs. Kent accepted the tin with a grateful smile. Thank you, Ms. Dolores. These look delicious. We'll have them with dessert. As they settled at the dinner table, a sense of warmth and connection filled the room. Ms. Dolores's initial shyness quickly faded as she found herself wrapped in the Kents' welcoming energy. She began to share her life stories, her face lighting up as she spoke about Ben and their adventures together. The Kents listened intently, captivated by her tales of her life with Ben. She shared memories of their trips to small towns, their favorite spots by the lake, and the spontaneous picnics they'd enjoyed on lazy Sunday afternoons. As she spoke, Liam felt a swell of pride that his family could see the incredible person he'd come to know. Between stories, Mr. Kent occasionally chimed in with stories of his own from his time as a volunteer firefighter, drawing a few laughs from everyone. Mrs. Kent shared a story of her own grandparents, who had been married for nearly 60 years and had a love for ballroom dancing. Laughter echoed around the table, creating a bridge of understanding between Ms. Dolores's past and the Kents' present. When dinner was over, they moved to the living room, where Mrs. Kent served coffee and a slice of apple pie for each of them. Liam brought out the tin of cookies Ms. Dolores had brought, proudly offering them to his parents. These are wonderful, Ms. Dolores, Mrs. Kent said, savoring her bite. Dolores, it's been wonderful having you here with us tonight. You've clearly brought so much joy into Liam's life, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that you're welcome here anytime. Ms. Dolores's eyes misted with emotion as she looked at each of them, her voice trembling slightly. Thank you all. I never expected to find such kindness in my neighbors. You've made me feel like family. Liam reached out, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. You are family, Ms. Dolores. We're so glad to have you with us. As the evening drew to a close, Liam walked Ms. Dolores to her car, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This small act of inviting her over had turned into something far more meaningful, a bridge between generations, built on kindness and shared stories. Thank you, Liam, Ms. Dolores said softly as she unlocked her car. For everything. You don't know how much this night meant to me. Liam smiled, his heart full. I'm just glad you enjoyed it. We're all looking forward to having you over again soon. As she drove off into the night, Liam watched her car disappear down the street, feeling a sense of fulfillment and joy he hadn't known before. He knew he had made a difference, not just for Ms. Dolores, but for his family as well. In a world that often felt too busy and disconnected, he had found a way to bring people together. Back inside, Liam's parents were tidying up the dining room, their faces glowing with warmth from the evening. Mrs. Kent turned to him with a proud smile. "You've done something wonderful, Liam. I hope you know that." Mr. Kent nodded, wrapping an arm around his shoulder. "Your kindness is contagious. I think Ms. Dolores is going to be a big part of our lives from now on." Liam beamed, a quiet satisfaction settling in his heart. His simple gesture of reaching out to a neighbor had blossomed into something far greater, drawing his family closer and bridging the years between them and Ms. Dolores. He couldn't wait to see where this new friendship would take them all. And as he drifted off to sleep that night, he dreamed of laughter-filled dinners, of stories shared by the fire, and of a world where every generation found comfort and companionship in one another's company. In the weeks that followed Ms. Dolores's first dinner with the Kent family, Liam found himself stopping by her house more often. After school, he'd drop his backpack by the front door, grab a snack, and head down the street to Ms. Dolores's place. What started as occasional visits soon became a cherished part of his routine. Ms. Dolores's home was cozy and filled with personal touches, pictures, memorabilia, bookshelves stacked with novels she'd collected over the years. Liam loved the feeling of stepping into her world, a world rich with stories and a sense of comfort he couldn't quite describe. Ms. Dolores, in turn, began eagerly awaiting Liam's visits. She'd often prepare a small snack for them to share, and her face would light up the moment he arrived. Each visit brought new laughter and conversations, and soon it was clear that they were both looking forward to these afternoons. One rainy Wednesday, Liam arrived at Ms. Dolores's house, his raincoat dripping wet. She greeted him with a warm smile and handed him a towel to dry off. "You didn't have to come all the way in this weather, dear," she chided him gently. Liam shrugged, flashing a grin. "I don't mind a bit of rain. Besides, I didn't want to miss out on your stories today." Ms. Dolores laughed, her eyes twinkling with joy. "Well, I suppose I do have a few tales up my sleeve," she teased, leading him into the living room where a plate of warm cinnamon rolls awaited. As they settled onto the sofa, Ms. Dolores began telling Liam about her first years with her late husband, Ben, and the little traditions they had created together. She shared how they used to write each other letters, even after they were married, leaving notes around the house with sweet words or inside jokes to make each other smile. "Ben had a way of making the ordinary feel magical," she said, her voice soft with nostalgia. "It's funny how little gestures can mean so much. Sometimes it was just a cup of coffee he'd leave for me before work, but it always made me feel special." Liam leaned in, captivated. "It sounds like you had an amazing life together." Ms. Dolores nodded, her eyes misting with emotion. "We were truly lucky, and I see a bit of Ben's kindness in you, Liam. He would have adored you, just as I do." Liam felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He'd never expected to form such a strong bond with someone so much older than him, but Ms. Dolores felt like family, a wise, loving presence in his life. They continued sharing stories, laughing over tales from Ms. Dolores's youth and swapping funny memories from Liam's school days. The rain pattered softly against the windows, cocooning them in a cozy silence between stories. Liam felt an incredible sense of peace, knowing that this connection was something he could always come back to. As their friendship deepened, Ms. Dolores found herself feeling more alive than she had in years. With Liam, she rediscovered a joy she thought she'd lost with Ben's passing. His energy, curiosity, and warmth filled her days with renewed purpose, and she couldn't help but feel as though a piece of her heart was healing. One chilly afternoon, she surprised Liam with a handmade scarf. She'd been working on it for weeks, knitting in her spare time. When she wrapped it around his neck, Liam's face lit up with surprise. "It's so warm, Ms. Dolores," he exclaimed, running his fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you so much. I love it." Ms. Dolores chuckled, pleased by his reaction. "I'm glad you like it, dear. I thought of you every time I worked on it." He smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. "It's perfect. Now I'll think of you every time I wear it." Liam began wearing the scarf every day, especially when he visited her house. It felt like a symbol of their friendship, a physical reminder of the warmth and kindness they'd come to share. With each passing day, Ms. Dolores came to think of Liam not just as a friend, but as family, a grandson in spirit, if not by blood. She often shared stories of Liam's kindness with her friends at the community center, telling them about the young boy who had become like family to her. Her friends marveled at her newfound joy, noting the sparkle in her eyes whenever she spoke about him. "Liam is a treasure," she would say, her voice filled with pride. "He's the light in my life that I didn't know I needed." One Sunday, the Kints invited Ms. Dolores to join them for their family game night. She arrived, looking delighted but a bit unsure. Liam greeted her at the door, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Ms. Dolores. You'll fit right in. We play pretty relaxed games." As the night went on, they laughed and played board games, sharing stories and teasing each other with the ease of longtime friends. Mrs. Kint insisted that Ms. Dolores try her homemade hot chocolate, and Mr. Kint told one of his famously corny jokes, which made Ms. Dolores laugh so hard that she wiped tears from her eyes. "This is the most fun I've had in years," she confessed between chuckles. "Thank you all for including me. It feels like family." Mrs. Kint reached over, squeezing her hand. "That's because you are family to us, Ms. Dolores." Ms. Dolores's eyes shimmered with emotion, and she glanced around the table at the faces that had come to mean so much to her. She felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't experienced since Ben's passing, a warmth that wrapped around her heart like a gentle embrace. Liam beamed, feeling a surge of happiness as he watched her laugh and enjoy herself. He knew, deep down, that this was where she belonged. As the weeks turned into months, Liam and Ms. Dolores grew closer still. They developed small traditions, like baking cookies together on Saturdays or reading aloud from her favorite novels on rainy afternoons. Sometimes, they'd sit on the porch in comfortable silence, watching the world go by, each lost in their own thoughts but sharing a peaceful companionship. Ms. Dolores took joy in watching Liam grow, guiding him through his teenage worries and celebrating his achievements. She'd always ask about his day, listening intently as he recounted stories about school, his friends, and his plans for the future. One evening, as they sat together in the cozy glow of her living room, Ms. Dolores looked at Liam with a gentle expression. "Liam, you've brought so much happiness back into my life. I want you to know how much that means to me." Liam smiled, feeling a surge of emotion. "I feel the same way, Ms. Dolores. You've taught me so much, and well, you're like family to me." Ms. Dolores reached out, holding his hand. "I feel the same, dear. You've given me a family I thought I'd lost, and I'll always cherish that." From that moment, they both knew that their connection was unbreakable, a bond as strong as any family tie. For Ms. Dolores, Liam was the grandson she'd never had, a source of light and laughter. For Liam, Ms. Dolores was a guiding presence, a source of wisdom and love. They both found a sense of belonging in each other, a warmth that could only come from the shared trust and affection of family. No matter what life brought, they knew they would always have one another. As Liam walked home that night, he looked up at the stars, feeling an immense sense of gratitude. The simple act of fixing a TV had led him to one of the most meaningful relationships of his life. Ms. Dolores had become his friend, his mentor, and his family. He smiled to himself, knowing that he would always treasure these moments, the memories they had created, and the family they had built together. In a world that often felt too fast and disconnected, he had found a bond that was rare and beautiful, a friendship that bridged generations and filled his life with joy. One sunny afternoon, as Liam sat across from Ms. Dolores at her kitchen table, savoring a freshly baked slice of banana bread, he noticed a silver badge on the nearby shelf. He'd seen it before, but today, his curiosity got the better of him. "Ms. Dolores, I've always wondered about that badge," he said, pointing to the shining object. "Is that Ben's?" Ms. Dolores followed his gaze, her eyes softening as they settled on the badge. "Yes, it is," she replied, her voice filled with pride and nostalgia. "That badge belonged to my husband, Ben. He wore it every day during his years on the force." Liam felt a surge of curiosity. What was it like? I mean, having him as a police officer and all. Did he ever share any stories with you? Ms. Dolores smiled, the kind of warm smile that conveyed both pride and a touch of sadness. Oh, he had stories, all right. Ben was one of the bravest and kindest men I knew. He always believed in helping others, even if it meant going out of his way or risking his own safety. To him, being a police officer wasn't just a job, it was a calling. She leaned in, as if sharing a treasured secret. Ben used to say, kindness is the strongest shield we have. It can change the course of someone's day or even their life. And he lived by that. No matter what trouble he encountered, he'd look for ways to show compassion, to understand, to help. He believed justice went hand in hand with kindness. Liam was quiet, taking in every word. He'd never thought of kindness and justice as being connected, but hearing Ms. Dolores talk about her late husband made it all seem so natural, so powerful. He was also resilient, she continued. There were hard days, heartbreaking days, but he kept going because he knew people relied on him. He used to tell me, Dolores, resilience isn't about being tough. It's about standing back up, no matter how many times life knocks you down. It's about having faith in what you're doing, even when it's hard. Liam listened intently, feeling a new admiration for Ms. Dolores's husband. The way she spoke about him, with such respect and love, made him wish he could have met this remarkable man. It sounds like he was an incredible person, Liam said quietly. I think I'd like to be like that too. Ms. Dolores's face lit up, her hand reaching across the table to rest on his. You already have so much of that in you, Liam. Ben would have been so proud of you. I see his kindness and resilience in the way you look out for others. They sat in thoughtful silence for a moment before Ms. Dolores added, Ben often taught me that true courage isn't just about facing danger. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, even when you're standing alone. These words stayed with Liam. 4 days after that conversation, he found himself thinking about Officer Ben's principles: kindness, resilience, and justice. He wondered how he could start applying these lessons in his own life, even in small ways. The more he thought about it, the more he realized he wanted to make a difference, to be the kind of person Ben would be proud of. The opportunity came sooner than Liam expected. At school, a younger student, Max, was often picked on by a few older kids. Most students just looked away, not wanting to get involved. But one day, when Liam saw Max cornered by these bullies, he felt a surge of determination. Recalling Ms. Dolores's words about courage, Liam approached them. Hey, leave him alone, he said firmly, his voice unwavering. The older kids turned to him, surprised by his interruption. And what are you going to do about it? One of them sneered. Liam stood his ground, feeling the rush of fear, but pushing past it. You wouldn't want someone treating you this way, would you? Just let him be. It doesn't make you tough to pick on someone smaller. For a moment, the bullies seemed taken aback. Maybe it was the calm yet steady tone in his voice, or maybe they hadn't expected someone to stand up to them. After a tense silence, they muttered something under their breath and walked away, leaving Max alone. Max looked up at Liam, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thanks, Liam. They're always bothering me, but nobody's ever stepped in before. Liam smiled, clapping Max on the shoulder. Anytime, Max, remember, you're not alone. Walking away, he felt a surge of pride. It wasn't the easiest thing he'd ever done, but he knew it was the right thing. Standing up for Max had felt like the beginning of something bigger, a chance to make a difference, just as Ben had. Over the next few weeks, Liam continued to find small ways to apply Ms. Dolores's lessons. At home, he started helping his elderly neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, with his groceries, carrying bags to his doorstep and chatting with him for a while. Mr. Jenkins was thrilled to have a bit of company, and Liam realized that kindness didn't always need to be a grand gesture. Sometimes, it was in the little things, the moments that showed others they were valued and seen. At school, he continued to befriend Max, making sure he was never left out during lunch or recess. Liam's kindness quickly inspired a few of his classmates to step up and befriend Max as well, and before long, Max had found his own circle of friends. The sense of pride Liam felt was overwhelming. He knew he was living out the values Ben had stood for. One day, as he helped Ms. Dolores prune her rose bushes, he told her about standing up for Max and the difference he'd seen it make. Ms. Dolores's face glowed with pride as she listened. That's exactly what Ben would have wanted, Liam. Standing up for others is never easy, but it's always worth it. Sometimes, it only takes one act of kindness or courage to inspire others to do the same. Liam nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection to Ben's legacy. I just wish I could have known him, he admitted. Miss Dolores smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. In a way, you do know him, Liam. His spirit lives on through you, and the kindness you show. You've brought Ben's legacy to life in a way I never thought possible. That weekend, as Liam sat in his room reflecting on everything he had learned, he realized how much Miss Dolores had changed his life. She'd not only become his friend but his guide, sharing lessons and memories that had given him a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Inspired, he decided to make a small keepsake to honor Ben and the lessons he'd learned. He found an old piece of wood in the garage, and with some careful sanding and carving, he created a small plaque. On it, he engraved the words kindness, resilience, justice, a tribute to the values he'd come to cherish. The following day, he presented it to Ms. Dolores. I wanted to make something to honor Ben, he said, a bit shyly, and to remind both of us of everything he stood for. Ms. Dolores took the plaque, her hands trembling slightly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she ran her fingers over the words, her face filled with emotion. Oh, Liam, she whispered. This is beautiful. Thank you, dear. They shared a long hug, both feeling the weight and warmth of the moment. In that embrace, Liam felt as though he was hugging both Miss Dolores and the spirit of her late husband, connecting him to a legacy of kindness that had crossed generations. As Liam rode his bike home that evening, he felt a deep sense of peace and pride. He understood now that Ben's values weren't just about big actions, but about making small, meaningful choices every day. He knew he would carry these lessons with him forever, letting them guide his path and shape his future. Through Ms. Dolores and her stories, he had come to know a man who had lived with integrity and compassion. And in honoring that legacy, Liam felt he'd become part of something larger than himself, a family bound not just by blood, but by shared values and an unwavering commitment to kindness. One crisp autumn morning, Liam rode his bike over to Ms. Dolores's house as usual. The leaves crunched under his tires, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wood smoke through the neighborhood. As he approached her porch, he noticed Ms. Dolores waiting for him by the front door, looking thoughtful, almost as if she had something on her mind. "Good morning, Ms. Dolores," he called out, flashing a warm smile as he hopped off his bike. Ms. Dolores returned his smile, though there was a certain tenderness in her expression today that Liam couldn't quite place. "Good morning, dear. Come on inside. I have something I'd like to talk to you about." Curious, Liam followed her into the living room, where a small box wrapped in a faded blue cloth sat on the coffee table. They took their seats, and Ms. Dolores gestured toward the box with a soft sigh. "Liam," she began, her voice gentle yet filled with emotion, "you've been a part of my life in a way I never expected. Since Ben passed, I thought that part of my heart, the part that found joy in companionship, was gone. But you brought it back. You gave me hope, love, and purpose again, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Liam felt a surge of warmth spread through him, and he smiled shyly. "You've done the same for me, Ms. Dolores. I never thought I'd find a friend and mentor like you." She nodded, her eyes misting. "That's why I want to do something for you, something to show how much you mean to me." Reaching for the cloth-covered box, Ms. Dolores took a deep breath before lifting the lid. Inside was an antique silver watch, polished to a shine, its face bearing a few light scratches that told a story of years gone by. "This," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "was Ben's watch. He wore it every day during his years on the police force. It became a part of him, a reminder of his duty, his kindness, and the resilience he showed every day." Liam's eyes widened as he looked at the watch, understanding instantly the significance of this gesture. "Ms. Dolores, this is incredible. I don't know what to say." She placed the watch carefully in his hands, her fingers brushing his as she smiled. "I want you to have it, Liam. You remind me so much of Ben. Your kindness, your courage. I know he would be proud to see you carry on his values." Liam held the watch delicately, feeling its weight and the legacy it represented. He could hardly believe Miss Dolores trusted him with something so precious. "I'll treasure it, Miss Dolores," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. I'll make sure to honor it." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the gesture settling over them. Finally, Miss Dolores spoke again, her voice brightening. "And there's something else, something I've been planning for a while." Liam looked up, curious. Miss Dolores's eyes sparkled with excitement as she explained, "I've set up a scholarship fund in your name, Liam. It's modest, but it will help you pursue whatever dreams you have. Ben believed in helping young people find their path, and I know he'd want me to support you in any way I can." Liam's heart skipped a beat. A scholarship? For me? He could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Ms. Dolores, you've already given me so much. I don't know if I can accept this." Miss Dolores shook her head, her expression gentle but firm. "This isn't just for you, Liam. It's for me too. It gives me purpose, knowing I can help you on your journey. Ben would have wanted this. He always dreamed of leaving a lasting impact, and through you, I feel I can keep that dream alive." Liam felt tears prick his eyes. He had never imagined his friendship with Miss Dolores would lead to something like this. A scholarship, a gift beyond anything he could have hoped for. He realized that her support wasn't just about funding his education. It was about passing on a legacy of kindness and resilience. "Thank you, Miss Dolores," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I promise I'll make the most of this. I'll carry on Ben's legacy and do my best to make you both proud." Ms. Dolores reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I know you will, Liam. I believe in you." The next day, Liam was at home after school, going over his homework when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Kent answered it, and a few moments later, she called out to Liam from the living room. "Liam, there's someone here to see you." Puzzled, Liam got up and walked down the hallway. Standing by the door was a tall man in a police uniform, his badge glinting in the afternoon sunlight. He wore a warm smile, and his presence instantly filled the room with a calm, steady energy. "Hello, Liam," the officer greeted him, extending a hand. "I'm Officer Thomas. I was good friends with Ben, Ms. Dolores's husband." Liam shook his hand, feeling both excitement and nervousness. "It's nice to meet you, Officer Thomas. I didn't know Ben had friends who were still in touch with Ms. Dolores." Officer Thomas chuckled, his eyes twinkling with fondness. "We go way back, she and I. Ben was like a brother to me, and we've always kept in touch. I'm here because Ms. Dolores asked me to deliver a special message." Liam's curiosity grew. "What's the message?" The officer reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to Liam. "It's from Ms. Dolores. She wanted me to bring it to you personally." With trembling hands, Liam took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note in Ms. Dolores's elegant script. "Dear Liam, this watch I've given you and the scholarship I've created in your name. They are my way of saying thank you, of showing my love and pride for the young man you've become. Ben's legacy lives on through you now, and I know you'll do incredible things. I've asked Officer Thomas to tell you about one of Ben's final projects, something he always dreamed of but couldn't complete. I hope it inspires you as much as it inspired him. With all my love, Ms. Dolores." Liam looked up at Officer Thomas, who smiled knowingly. "Ben had a dream, Liam," he said softly. "He always wanted to create a community center, a safe place where young people could learn, grow, and find support. He believed that with a little guidance and opportunity, anyone could build a better future." The officer paused, looking at Liam with a gentle but intense gaze. "Ben started saving up for it, but he never got to see it happen. I think Ms. Dolores saw that same dream in you. Maybe, someday, you could be the one to bring it to life." The weight of the responsibility settled over Liam, but it felt right, like a calling. Ben's legacy was no longer just a story. It was a mission, something he felt deeply connected to. "I'd like that, Officer Thomas," he said, his voice steady. "I'd like to make Ben's dream come true. I want to give back the way he would have." Officer Thomas nodded, pride evident in his expression. "I believe you will, Liam. You have everything you need to make it happen." With that, the officer patted Liam on the shoulder, giving him a look that felt almost paternal. "You're carrying a torch now, son. Keep it burning bright." As the officer left, Liam stood there, feeling both humbled and inspired. He clutched the watch on his wrist, its weight a constant reminder of the kindness and strength that had come before him. He knew that Ms. Dolores had given him more than just a scholarship or a gift. She'd entrusted him with a purpose, a mission to carry forward the legacy of a man he'd never met but had come to admire deeply. Later that evening, as Liam lay in bed, he thought about the path that lay ahead. He didn't know exactly how he'd fulfill Ben's dream, but he knew he would dedicate himself to it. It was no longer just about his future. It was about honoring the kindness, resilience, and justice that Ben had lived by. And as he drifted off to sleep, Liam felt a sense of peace, knowing that he was part of something bigger, something meaningful. He had become a living testament to Ben's legacy, a bridge between the past and the future, guided by love and the simple but profound values that would shape the rest of his life. The following weeks were a whirlwind for Liam. After receiving Ms. Dolores's heartfelt gifts and learning about Ben's unfinished dream of a community center, he felt a deep sense of purpose, as if he'd been entrusted with a mission greater than himself. The watch on his wrist, Ben's legacy, was a constant reminder of the values Ms. Dolores and her husband had instilled in him: kindness, resilience, and justice. One Saturday morning, Liam approached the small community center on the east side of Cedar Hill, the one Ben had often volunteered at during his years on the force. Though it was modest, it served as a gathering place for people of all ages, a safe haven where kids could find support, friendship, and guidance. As he stepped inside, the hum of activity filled the air. Volunteers moved in and out of the main hall, setting up tables and stacking chairs. Kids laughed and played in the activity room while parents chatted quietly by the coffee station. Liam felt a sense of warmth wash over him, a feeling of belonging he hadn't anticipated. "Hi there. Can I help you?" a woman with a friendly smile asked as she walked up to him. She wore a volunteer badge and looked as though she'd been organizing community events for years. "Hi, I'm Liam," he replied, smiling. "I'd like to volunteer, if there's anything I can do to help." The woman's eyes lit up with surprise. "Well, Liam, it's wonderful to have you here. I'm Sandra, the center's coordinator. We can always use an extra set of hands, especially someone as enthusiastic as you seem to be. What brings you here?" Liam hesitated for a moment, thinking of Ms. Dolores and Ben's legacy. "I want to make a difference," he said, his voice steady. "A good friend of mine. She lost someone special who spent a lot of time helping others. I want to carry that forward." Sandra nodded thoughtfully, sensing the sincerity in his words. "You're in the right place, Liam. We can definitely use someone with a heart like yours." Liam started out helping with small tasks, arranging chairs, sorting through donated clothes for the center's free store, and organizing the books in the small library. Every day brought new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference, however small. Over time, he found himself getting to know the regulars at the center, the kids who came by after school for tutoring, the seniors who gathered for craft sessions, and the volunteers who dedicated their time just to make the center a little brighter. One of the first kids he connected with was Oliver, a shy boy who struggled with his reading assignments. Every afternoon, Oliver would arrive with a book, his eyes cast down and his shoulders slumped, clearly embarrassed about his difficulties. One day, Liam sat next to him, offering a gentle smile. "Hey, Oliver, do you mind if I read with you? I could use some help with these big words, too." Oliver looked up, a glimmer of surprise in his eyes, then nodded. Liam began reading aloud, taking turns with him and gently guiding him through each sentence. With Liam's encouragement, Oliver's confidence slowly grew, and each week he became a little braver, tackling new words with determination. By the end of their first month together, Oliver proudly showed Liam a story he'd read on his own. "I finished it," he exclaimed, a huge smile lighting up his face. Liam felt a swell of pride, his heart warmed by the small but significant victory. "That's amazing, Oliver. I'm so proud of you." These simple moments, these victories shared in quiet corners, gave Liam a profound sense of fulfillment. He began to realize that the smallest acts of kindness could have a powerful ripple effect, just as Ms. Dolores had taught him. One afternoon, While Liam was helping set up a booth for the center's upcoming fundraiser, Sandra approached him, a thoughtful look on her face. "Liam, I've been watching you with the kids here," she said, smiling. "You have a way of connecting with them that's really special. They look up to you, you know?" Liam shrugged, a bit embarrassed. "I just try to help. I think it's what Ben would have wanted." Sandra tilted her head, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. "Ben? You mean Officer Ben? Ms. Dolores's husband?" Liam nodded. "Yeah, he was an incredible person. I never got to meet him, but from everything Ms. Dolores told me, he was dedicated to making a difference. He even dreamed of opening a community center one day, a place just like this." Sandra's smile softened. "Well, I'd say you're living out that dream for him, Liam. And if he were here today, he'd be incredibly proud of you." Hearing those words brought a swell of pride and determination. More than ever, Liam felt committed to carrying on Ben's legacy, to making this community center a place where people could feel safe, supported, and inspired. As the months went by, Liam took on more responsibilities at the center. He started organizing after-school activities, from art workshops to science experiments, giving kids a chance to explore their interests and discover new passions. The center's library became a second home to him, a place where he could introduce young readers to the stories that had inspired him. He also worked with Sandra to create a Community Champions program, where kids could learn about kindness and service by volunteering within their own neighborhoods. They organized neighborhood cleanups, planted flowers in the community garden, and even helped deliver groceries to seniors who couldn't leave their homes. One day, as Liam guided a group of kids in planting flowers, Ms. Dolores stopped by the center. She watched him for a few minutes, a proud smile on her face, before calling out to him. "Liam, look at you, leading a whole team. Ben would be so impressed." Liam looked up, beaming. "Ms. Dolores, I'm so glad you came. These kids are amazing. They're the future community champions." Ms. Dolores chuckled, her eyes glistening with pride. "And you're the perfect person to show them the way." The kids gathered around Ms. Dolores, asking her questions about the flowers and admiring her gentle wisdom. She told them about her garden and shared stories about Ben, filling them with a sense of admiration for the man whose kindness and courage still lived on through Liam's work. One evening, as Liam walked Ms. Dolores home after another successful day at the center, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Liam," she began, her voice soft, "thank you for everything you've done here. You've given life to a dream that I thought was lost." Liam shook his head. "You and Ben are the reason I'm here, Ms. Dolores. You both showed me what it means to care, to make a difference." She reached over, taking his hand in hers. "Ben may be gone, but his spirit is alive in you, Liam. I see it in every kind act, every smile you bring to those kids. You've become a part of our family and a part of his legacy." They shared a long hug, both of them overwhelmed by the depth of their connection. For Ms. Dolores, Liam was more than just a young friend. He was the living embodiment of her husband's hopes and dreams. And for Liam, Ms. Dolores was the guiding light that had shown him his path, giving him a purpose that would stay with him forever. As Liam continued his work at the community center, his confidence blossomed. He no longer saw himself as just a kid with a mission, but as someone who could truly make a difference. He had grown in ways he hadn't thought possible, becoming more compassionate, more resilient, and more devoted to service. Over the years, he went on to expand the community center, establishing programs that reached far beyond Cedar Hill. He created scholarships, workshops, and mentorship opportunities for young people who, like him, needed a place to belong and a guiding hand. And all throughout his journey, he wore Ben's watch as a symbol of the legacy he carried, a reminder that kindness, resilience, and justice were values that could change lives and inspire generations. Liam knew he would always be grateful for the day he'd stopped to help Ms. Dolores fix her TV. That small act of kindness had opened the door to a lifelong purpose, forever shaped by the love and wisdom of Ms. Dolores and her husband Ben. Their legacy lived on, woven into the fabric of every life he touched and every community he helped to build. And through it all, he carried forward the simple truth that had transformed his life. A single act of kindness could change the world,